Hey, this is part 3 of the Figma to Webflow series where we will be building out our landing page, and this is what I'm working off right here. What I'm going to do is actually start by building out another button right here because we need this button. In the past tutorials we kind of built out our type and colors and then like some of our tagging, which are sort of located under buttons. So you could categorize these separately, but just for the sake of time, we've kind of kept them in the same place. But what we want to do here is create this button. And in order to do that, you can see that this actually has a shadow applied to it. In order to do that, we're going to need to apply a box shadow to it. So I'm going to make that, and I will show you what's next after. We've got our buttons styled properly to fit and match with the landing page. I've also made these other secondary buttons as well. And then we already have these tags, which are the purple buttons. So I'm just going to walk you through how we made this. You want to make sure that you've got everything on this base button right here. You can see that the button large has this additional combo class, and if you do button small, that should give the small button class. You can see here we've got our box shadow, and this is actually what is creating this kind of like outline effect. Make sure that you have an angle set to 135 degrees, and then the distance is 8. And then what you want to do is sort of play around with the transform. What I've done here is I've done a -4x and a -4y, and then I've set a transition of all properties on here, and we actually want this to be 150. So we're going to save that, and then when you go into the hover mode, you can see what changes. So this is down to 0 now. This is also at 0 rather than -4, both of these, and then it takes on that transition, and you can see that there. Now the secondary button is a little bit harder because you can't actually create gradient borders within Webflow. So what you're going to want to do is, you can see here that I've brought in these div blocks and I've thrown the button inside of them. And depending on whatever the size of your border is, so let's say it's 2 pixels, you would do 2 pixels all around for padding. In our case, it's 1 pixel. So I applied that, and then I set the background to linear gradient, and then I applied all of my gradient colors. And then lastly, I gave it a gradient border class name, and I made sure to wrap all of my buttons inside of this gradient border. So essentially, the button just is black with white text. And I've also added a hover effect, which is very subtle, but just slightly lighter. And so you can see that there. All right, so that is our buttons. Now I can go into creating our page. I'm gonna build that, and then I will check back in. Okay, so I'm actually gonna go ahead and build this here and see if I can get as far as possible while recording. I may cut a few times in the middle. So I'm actually going to be referencing this container layout guidance within the Hatch guidelines, because this is sort of where I want to start. So we're going to drag in this div block right here. We're going to drag in this div block. Okay, we've got our div block dragged in, and we're going to name it based on this container class. So we want container. What do we want the size of our container to be? So we're going at 1440 right now with, I believe, 100 on each side. So we want, I believe, container 1440, 1.5 rem. So 1.5 rem, 24 pixels on each side, and we need a lot more than that. So I think what we want is the section. Okay, we're gonna go with the base 6 rem. So we're gonna create our section, throw our container inside of this section, and then we're gonna call it, the inner piece is 24 pixels on each side. So we actually may want the small. So let's do section in small. Let's see what our spacing in between here is. It's 64. So I believe out means margin. We probably want to do margin. So I'm just gonna calculate what we want for our padding inside of each container. We know we want it to be 1440, but we want the padding to be more. We want it to be 100 on each side. So we're gonna do 100 divided by 16, 6.25. Here, do 6.25 and 6.25. Okay, we've got that set. Right now, 4.5 times 16 is 72, top and bottom. So we may adjust this eventually, but for now we're gonna keep this. We're gonna add in, we're gonna skip the nav for now, just add in the heading. And I believe this is giving us our heading, but what we want, if I go back to here, is our text, let's see, 6XL, might be 5, yeah, 5. And we're just gonna tweak this a little bit. It's gonna be 72 divided by 16. So we're gonna just take that down to 4.5. So we're gonna do text 5XL, and then we're gonna switch this to 4.5. All right, now what we want is we can just copy and paste this in, and I'm gonna go ahead and just create these text spans really quick. So I think inclusive space, so these will span, and you can just do wrap with span. I'm gonna go ahead and give this its class. I'm gonna call it green text span. And then I'm going to grab this color, copy that to my clipboard, paste that in. Now I've got that. And then I think the other one, yep, share their life plus work. All right, we're gonna text span that, and we'll say, what? Well, let's grab the color too. We'll just say like purple for that. All right, there we go. So we've got our two colors added in for our text spans. What do we need next? Our buttons. So we already have our buttons made. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back, and actually let's rename this and call it style guide. Just drag this above style guide maybe. Or actually, we can make this the home page. Make your own home page. We'll do that. And you can see it renamed it to old home, so I have to go and do style guide again. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna copy over this button instead of recreating the whole thing. For these, all these large buttons, we actually need to go to a larger size. So we're gonna do 28 divided by 16. We're gonna go 1.75. Huge. And you know, these smaller ones might end up changing eventually, but we can just go with the flow here. This secondary for now. Figure out why it is breaking later. So we've got all of that. Now I will take this, copy that, and bring it over to home. And I will just drop it in my container. Okay. So I'm going to go back to layout because eventually we're going to have to space those out a little bit better. Okay, so it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of documentation around spacing for wrappers. So I may have to make that. So we'll make that eventually. I want to get that in there as well. So what I'm going to do is just make a div. There is this documentation here. So we want to flex row. So let's see. Boom. And then we want our text links in there too. Which, do we make text links? Yes, kind of. But what we're gonna do here is go ahead and on hover, make it turn purple. Cool. So I'm just gonna copy this, bring it over. Oh, maybe we did created link colors. I don't know if we actually styled links themselves. So let's make one. Just gonna drag that down here and we'll call it links. And then we want to drag our, actually we want a text link. So I'll undo that. Command E for quick search. We want text link. And then let's see, what size are all of our links? Are they all the same? Do we use links anywhere else? Looks like these are linking. But that is not. Oh, okay, so it's. So our text links are blatant. Okay. And this is size 28. Cool. So 1.75, I think. Blatant. Size 1.75. Rem. Delete that. And okay, text link. Great. So now I'll copy that. Oh, and let's actually add a transition onto this so that when you hover, maybe it'll fade in a little bit slower. Doesn't look like that did much. That's okay. So, all right, so we've got our text link here. Copy that, bring it over to home. And then we want this to be, what do they say? Flex row. And then, or no, let's, yeah, so that's what that does, obviously. We want to flex justify center. I want this to be aligned center. So row middle, that would make sense, right? What, there's another one in there too. Flex row center. Oh, okay. So yeah, we want flex row middle. And then I'm just gonna give this actually, I'm gonna keep it outside of it. I'm just gonna create this and say that it's a spacer. And we're gonna say, let's see, how far apart are these? So there, okay, so it's whatever it is plus 8. Okay, so 76. So spacer 76 pixels. And then we'll do what, 38 on each side, but not the top and bottom. I need to get rid of that. 0 and 0. Okay, so we've got those spaced out. And then what does this say? View member directory. So this should now say, join us on Slack. I want to give this some top padding. So, let's see, what do I want to do for that? I feel like there should be something that exists for like spacing in between. We don't want to use our sections for it though, I don't think. Okay, I'm just going to give it custom padding. So let's see, so we've got, that's right, 64 pixels. So I'm going to take this and say top margin 64 pixels. Okay, cool. All right, so we've got all of that in there. Now we want to build our nav and our footer. First, what we want to do is actually, I want to see if there's any sort of like consistency around the footer kind of having the same padding from each section. It looks like it's kind of different on each page. So what I'm going to do is make it the same on each. So I'm going to say it's at least 160 from whatever content is above it. And we can adjust that later. But I'm going to just go ahead and create that. So let's see if there's anything around top padding being 160. So yeah, XL. So we want it to be called section out XL, I believe. So we're gonna drop this in here and we'll call it section out XL. I also want to rename this to section out. Or wait, what was it called? In small. Section out small. Okay, cool. I just like doing margin for outer stuff. Usually to get the correct spacing. So then section out XL got 10 rem. And again, that's 160 pixels. But we're gonna go custom with this because we don't want it on the bottom, and I think there's a way to override that. So yeah, section out remove bottom. So if I go in here, section out remove bottom. Just gonna set that to 0. So that should change. Not sure why that isn't, but that is what it should be, section out. Oh, looks like, I wonder if I just do normal like div blocks, if I can still apply this class. I should be able to. Section out XL, and then what did I do for this? Or what was it? Section out remove. Section out remove bottom. So you can see that goes to 0, and then I'll just get rid of that. I prefer to use the divs over the actual section blocks. Really doesn't matter. I just usually use these and then add the classes on them and make them into more custom sections and containers, but these work as well.